Okay, so we're gonna get started I'm gonna show the demo. Here's my photo reference, here's my drawing. I used a soft pencil to draw this. This demo is showing you how to use watercolor and gouache. So this is all my old watercolor you can rehydrate. This is watercolor also. Lamp Black, brand name's Holbein. This is white gouache, permanent white gouache, and the brand name is Utrecht. See how that's shiny? And see how that doesn't really have a shine? It's matte. So there you can tell the difference. Gouache is an opaque watercolor. Watercolor is translucent. It's a translucent watercolor. So I'm going to start with this small filbert. It's by Winsor Newton and Cotman, and it's 6 millimeters / a quarter inch. But I love filberts, so I'm going to start with a filbert. Only dipping the tip of my brush in the jar of water. And what I'm going to do first is, I'm going to rehydrate this raw sienna. So there it is on my palette, right? There's the watercolor. Now I'm going to clean off my brush. Dry it off thoroughly. No, Mr. Dean. No, Mr. Dean. And here's my clean cup of water again, and I'm only dipping the tip. Now, for the white gouache, we want it to be like half and half consistency. So I want you to make sure you see that. See that blob? That's how much paint I put on there. See how I'm not mixing it to where it's like some people have a tendency to overmix and it separates their medium on their palette. That's like half and half consistency. This looks like the creamer you put in your coffee. Next time, take a real close look at a creamer. If you don't have a creamer, when you go to the store, and if it's in a glass jar, take a real close look at it. But this is half and half consistency with watercolor and gouache. Okay, that's what you want. Now see how my brush is loaded? Let's see if you can see that. Okay, great. So now I'm going to start blocking in that color. So I'm going to do planar application here. Oh, see, I like that. It looks nice, but I want it to go all the way to the bottom. So there, I want to simplify. I think it's best to start with simplification, large shapes before, getting into the detail. If you want to be really descriptive, description comes last. You don't, here, now I'm going to add another color. I'm going to add this red to it. And see, it's still at the half and half consistency. You see that? And I added some red to it. And you know what? I want to add this yellow ochre, so I'm going to clean off my brush again. Just as you're painting, you really need to just look and just be mindful, and also don't be too hard on yourself. It takes a while to understand and to look. And the more that you do, and the more, that you're applying yourself and you're like, I'm going to do this, then you're going to get it right. Okay, so this is at half and half consistency. This is great. See where I want to put this? Well, I want a warmer color, so actually I'm going to take this and I'm going to mix it in more there. And let's see, I'm going to... That's planar, 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 planar. Now, I don't want it, now this is going to form wet into wet, because see, this was wet, and these two areas are wet, so I need to let it dry. And so now I'm going to just use watercolor. This is watercolor right here, this red. So here, my brush was already wet. I thoroughly dried off my brush and, you know, stuck the tip again into the raw sienna, which has some of the red. So now I'm going to go into these other parts, and actually I'm thinking I'm going to use a smaller brush, like how I'm always talking about. So I'm going to use a small round. It's a Kolinsky, and I got this in New York when I was in graduate school. So now I'm going to block in this red, because you don't want to use, now see the watercolor bead there? That's a watercolor bead. So now to travel across this shape, go like that. And this is a saturated color, deep value. And this is all watercolor only right there. I think I might add some blue, some ultramarine blue. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. Now I'm going to use some colored gouache also. So I'm going to use this sepia. Oh, I guess I'm not, because I have trouble getting it from the bottom, so I'm going to hold off on that one. So let's see what else. Alizarin Crimson would also be good. Okay, can't use that one yet. Okay, let me see about dark green. Let's use a dark green. Great. This is dark green gouache. Here, so you can see it. It's dark green gouache. And I'm going to dip the tip of my brush, which I did, and I'm going to take some of this watercolor lamp black. That's sticky. This is watercolor. Shouldn't look that way. So now I'm going to go back, clean off my brush. You all know what to do. But dry, dry. Dip the tip. Okay. Now this is good. That's good consistency. Now I'm going to take this dark green gouache and I'm going to mix it in. A little bit more. Okay. This is great. Except the color, I want to add some red into there again. But that was good consistency. So see, with that lamp black watercolor and the dark green gouache, see, this is at its half and half consistency, so that's awesome. So now I'm going to take this red watercolor and I'm going to mix it in there, and we have this darkish purple. It's still a little more green. So I'm going to add a little more red. Now here. It's almost there. You can't quite see it. What I'm going to do is, there we go. See, this is half and half consistency, so this is great. And see, I like that edge there. So see how it's fresh and the surface is nice and it's like a deep value and a saturated color, which is great. I'm just go ahead and I'm going to block in because I'm not interested in detail. Now, I'm going to let this dry because I put just a teeny bit too much water here compared to there, so let it dry and I'm going to go back in, but yeah. I like that though. See, I manipulated there to be like watercolor. And see, it's starting to get dry. That means my brush isn't loaded. I don't have enough color on there. So here. It's gonna go. That means don't have enough pigment on my brush, so that means I have to go back and load my brush. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for a bit. I'm going to work on the other part. I'm going to go back to my filbert and it's good. Okay, half and half consistency. That's great. So this had watercolor and the white gouache. And so we made half and half consistency, both using an opaque watercolor and a translucent watercolor. Linear application, planer, and I'm using a filbert. Mix some of that color. I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to mix it. Now see, this isn't half and half consistency, and see how it's too smeared. So this isn't quite right. See like the difference? So we want to add a little more gouache. Add a little more water now, because when it starts to get a little thick, now see, yeah, it just needs a little more body. This is good. This is like the creamer, so this is great. Half and half consistency there. Now I can planer, planer, planer. And also, cold pressed watercolor paper is absorbent. See how it's already starting to absorb my paint. Ah. See, need to add more pigment on my brush. See how it's dragging? No, we don't have that. Linear. Oops. So I want to add so I took some of that watercolor and I put it in the white gouache. There we go, half and half consistency right there. Now I'm going to try this, it's Winsor & Newton, and it's a 1 round. And this area is dry, so I'm just going to go back in. And I also want to take some of the raw sienna. It's also here. And I'm going to mix it in here with this gray color. Take some of that color, mix that in there. Sorry. Take some of that color and mix in there. Okay. I think I want to add okay. Now I'm gonna block in this area. So this is half and half consistency with the watercolor and gouache. I'm gonna let that go for a moment and I'm gonna work on the face. So here, linear. See how that's at half and half consistency? Let's see. I'm gonna come back into this later, but showed you how to make the watercolor with gouache at half and half consistency. All right, thank you.